Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today what I want to talk about it's something like comparing, but not in terms of one's better and the other one's worse, but rather comparing them and look at how they do different things. Both Jaeger-LeCoultre and uh, Glashütte Original, in my opinion, have lousy websites. They have very poor information design, hard to find things, so that doesn't help them. This is not anything new for the watch business. They have sound. It just seems like everyone says, "Well, we ought to do this, we ought to do this," and their websites need some work. Okay, enough of that. Let's take a look at the first two I want to look at are sort of good everyday watches, but very different watches. The Reverso is began life as a sports watch. The guy wanted to play polo. He loved Jaeger-LeCoultres, so they had it flip over, and then on the back side there it was just all steel, and you flip it back, and that's what essentially this one is with the green dial. Hand wound, 3 hertz. It's called the Reversal Tribute Small Seconds, $8,700. The base prices of Jaeger-LeCoultre have gone up a lot, I think, over the last several years, but that's neither here nor there. A lot of things have gone up in price. This watch is just I guess you'd call it a good everyday watch. You'd wear it to work. I don't know if you want green. They have it in white and blue and black and some other colors. They have a red one too that's sort of interesting. And that's about all I can say about it. It's just a nice, good, solid watch, and they work well. Now, I can say the same thing about the CQ. Now, the CQ, I guess most people say, well, that's a diver. What do you mean it's an everyday watch? Well, desk divers, I guess. This is one, it's 4 hertz, and almost all, I think, of the Glashütte Original are 4 hertz, even some of their more expensive one. And this one's about the same price, $8,262. And it's got these, great big hands, big arrow hands, and a little date window. I guess you'd probably want perhaps a little larger date window. This is just sort of a good everyday watch. Both of these watches, I think, I look at it in that sense. But they're, like I said, they're very different styles. Now, the next two, the same thing. They're very different styles, but they do have one thing in common. They're both chronographs. And I will not complain about chronographs. So, and looking at them, and by the way, too, both of these companies, all of their movements are in-house. So I didn't really pay as much attention to those as that, oh, well, this has got this or that. I have to some extent. Almost all of them are 4 hertz on the Glashütte I mentioned, and a lot of them are on a Jaeger-LeCoultre as well. Now, here are 2 of them. The Polaris chronograph is one for a chronograph. The reason I like it is that it's fairly clean. I mean, and by that I mean you've got your subdials at 9 and 3, but it doesn't really clutter it up. And I use a second hand for a chronograph second as well. The 70s chronograph panorama date. The thing about this one I like a lot because it's got a very useful date window, and it's nice and big. The way the chronograph subdials are set up, along with the power reserve indicator over there about 9:30, you have a good clear indicator. You also have a little indicator window right below 12 o'clock. And so you have some, I mean, but at the same time, it's not messy. That's the same thing that always drives me crazy about chronographs. I still understand why why they're so popular, because when I ask people, I go, what do you use it for? Come up with something like egg timer. I suppose there's certain things and certain kinds of work or hobbies or something that chronograph is really important. And both Jaeger-LeCoultre and Glashütte have nice ones. Now, but you can see how different they are. One thing I like about the Glashütte, besides the nice, if you're going to have a date to have a nice big one like they have, is the crown guard. Really nice crown guard on that one. I mean, you got enough things to snag on with a chronograph. Might as well have a crown guard. Now, here are a couple of watches that are sort of your everyday office watch. Just nice, plain watches. They're both automatic, so you don't have to worry about them too much. The master control date does have a date window, and the date window is not terribly small. I like the bigger one, but that's neither here nor there. It's just a good solid watch. $8,400, automatic winding, 40 millimeters. It's sort of right in the sizes I like. If I do have something about that somebody should have sort of thought through a little more, is that the color of the hands and the color of the background, other than the second hand, could use a little more contrast. But it's otherwise, you get a good watch. One of the things I like, especially about Jaeger-LeCoultre, because I know a little more about them because my wife has one and had it for years, and it's a great watch, is that they have really excellent movements, and they were a movement maker. Then later on they started making watches, but they made movements for Patek Philippe, Vacheron Constantin, and a lot of other really top watches. Now, the 60s is a style, and they have a lot of different colors. Every year they have a yearly one with a different color dial, and those are a lot of fun. And the 60s is, again, like the Master Control date, is one of those good, solid, everyday kind of watches where that maybe you could, that one's a little more formal. You could, wear it for something more formal, evening wear, something like that too. But here are a couple, both of them I think have nice watches with that. I don't care much about date windows or dates altogether, but a lot of people do, and so depending on how you feel about that, either the date window is a good thing or not. Now, here, this bothers me not only about both the Jaeger-LeCoultre and Glashütte Original, is something seems to have happened. They don't seem to give the same attention that they did at one time to affordable chronometer watches. And chronometers, to me, is sort of really the hallmark. Now, I know there are ways that they can make COSC level movements with relatively inexpensive movements, but for some reason, it doesn't seem to be that important, I guess, to a lot of watch buyers. They want an accurate watch, but you'd think there'd be more chronometers, but there just aren't. Here are two. The Senator chronometer was one that was sort of discovered by me. One I really like. It just there's a classic feel about it. They're in white gold, and my only beef about any gold or platinum is that they raise the price astronomically, and you can do just as well with steel or even titanium for that. But I think, but this would be a very nice watch. When you see something like this, you can find one by Allonga and some of these other very high watch for a lot more money, and I think you get that with this watch. Really like it, the Senator chronometer. Now, the Geophysic True Second. This is the bone I've got to pick with Jaeger-LeCoultre. They dropped the Geophysic line, and they got a few that sort of came out as something else. And to me, the True Second it's a chronometer rated watch. They don't put chronometer on it for some reason. They like geophysic better. The geophysic True Second. Now the True Second is a jumping second, and whatever you think about jumping seconds, the movement on this jumping second is almost like a remontoire. It's really a beautiful piece of work. And so what I did is that you can't get these new, but they are on the used market. And I think if you want to really get a good watch, that would be one to have. Again, it has a very plain. I mean, they don't get much plainer than looking in the True Second, but you get a super good watch. They're about 39.6 millimeters. Why they put the fraction in, I don't know. The best deal I could find on one, or the sort of the least expensive on Chrono 24 was $7,500. But that, I think, is a honey of a watch. And unfortunately, they sort of got rid of that whole line of watches. Another thing I can grumble about, I suppose. Now, these final two watches sort of are. They're both in gold. They're both fairly expensive, but they really represent, I think, some really good quality watches, especially at the Jaeger-LeCoultre. I'll talk about that in a second. The Panomatic, there's a whole line of Pano watches. They have all kinds of different things within Glashütte Original. This one I happen to like. I mean, it's really a very attractive watch. It's got this a very interesting sort of a date ribbon almost along from about 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. There's this little window down there. You can see the date. And it has a moon phase, and small seconds, and as well as not a grand hour and minute, but it's very clear. And there's something about this watch that I just really is sort of one of the much higher quality watch you see a lot of these things in. Now, the duometric Quantum Lunaire by Jaeger-LeCoultre is one of my very, very, very favorite. In fact, the duometric line, I like it better, duometric line. I like it better than their top of the line, which is a bunch of tourbillons. This watch is something like a parallel dual barrel. It has like two movements in it, and they have different jobs for them. But and it's hand wound, 50 hours. This is a super watch, and a watch like this sort of plays around with a lot of functions that are not the most useful perhaps, but the very interesting watch. And I just think the duometry Quantum Lunaire is a watch that anybody would love to have. Unfortunately, the list price is $43,000. So, and looking at these generally seen as sort of mid-level luxury watches. Both companies are. And what I would like to see, besides them cleaning up both of their, I don't know, their websites, just to make it easy to find things. And if they're selling stuff, they want to make it easy for the buyer. That's sort of another thing. But the main thing I would really like to see is for something of, I almost might call it old-fashioned, kind of good chronometers, and again, especially in some of the lower-end models that they have. And to go back to that. Now, having said that, if just collectors are interested in those kinds of things, and most other people want, they want added functions or some other thing like that, and they can't sell them. That's how come they got rid of True Second. You know, this thing looks like a Timex. Who wants that? Me, because of what's going on inside. And so that I'd like to see more of. But like I said, if people aren't buying that, you know, it's sort of, you don't want to go broke because, you know, a bunch of collectors like certain little things in watches. But both of these companies have some really neat things, and I like to hear from you about them. And some of the stuff, because there's a lot more to both companies, believe me. And I'd really like to hear from you and take a look at some of these and see what you think. This is an invitation to subscribe if you like. And until next time, this is Bill Sanders for Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. And like I said, I'd really like to hear from you.